Today, I'd like to showcase one of the weirdest computers in my collection. This is a Lenovo YogaBook C930, a laptop that, instead of a keyboard, just has another screen. And it doesn't stop there. This laptop has some insanely unique quirks that I don't think I've seen on any other machine, and I'd like to show them to you today. But first, a little history. This is actually the second generation Lenovo YogaBook. The first was released in 2016 and had a similar design to this one. It was available as either an Android version or a Windows version, with both having an Intel Atom processor and 4 GB of RAM. Instead of a keyboard, the entire lower half of the machine was capacitive, with what Lenovo called a Halo keyboard. It came with a stylus that also doubled as a real pen, as well as a notepad that you could put over the capacitive surface so that you could take notes and have them digitized in real time. In 2018, the YogaBook was refreshed. Gone were the Halo keyboard and notepad, and in their stead was a second touchscreen. This second screen was e-ink, the same tech that's used in Kindles and other e-readers to give them their signature paper-like appearance. The YogaBook line has continued since then, with the latest model, the YogaBook 9i, now just having two normal screens. Moving back to the C930, the design is just striking. It looks like something out of the future, even 6 years after its release. And it may not be immediately apparent, but this thing is ridiculously thin. I mean, this is a normal mechanical pencil, and the entire laptop is barely thicker than it. The bottom case is just barely wide enough to accommodate the single USB-C port here. The top display, which is 10.8 inches, has a super crisp resolution of 2560 by 1600, meaning it looks gorgeous. The hinge is Lenovo's jewelry style, which was a trademark of the Yoga series, at least when this thing was released. I/O is pretty Spartan, with just the two USB-C ports, one on either side, as well as a microSD card slot here. Next to the e-ink display, there's also a fingerprint reader here for secure authentication. In terms of performance, the YogaBook was either available with a Core M3 or a Y-series Core i5 processor, which mine obviously has, and RAM was either 4 or 8 GB, with mine unfortunately being limited to 4. Otherwise, it's a pretty normal laptop with specs pretty much comparable to others in its class. So, what can this e-ink screen actually do? Well, once you have Windows installed and the drivers loaded, a couple options become available here in the top right. Starting from the left, the first one is a pen tablet mode. If you've ever used a drawing tablet on a computer before, this should be pretty familiar. There was a Wacom stylus available with the Lenovo YogaBook, which I unfortunately do not have, that would make drawing with this a little bit easier, but you can get the general idea of how this would work. Moving right, the next option here is a notebook mode, with the idea being that you can rotate the laptop all the way around and just take notes on the e-ink display. And then once you're done, you can copy and paste them back into the Windows side. Moving along, the next option is an e-reader. And I found this to work pretty well. It works with both EPUB and PDF formats. And again, the idea was that you could just close the laptop and just basically use this as an e-reader and save on battery life. But the final option down here is by far the coolest. If I hit this icon here, you can see that the e-ink display becomes a full mirror of what's on the top screen. And you can just completely use this normally and do everything you would normally do on the computer while saving battery life by not having to turn on the LCD. Up here we have a couple options. You can either prioritize quality or speed. Turning on speed will totally ruin the picture quality, but it'll be a little bit more fluid with the animations, at least in theory. And then one kind of design flaw with e-ink displays is that they tend to ghost, or in other words, leave an after image when something disappears off the screen. If that happens, there is an option in the menu here to clear that after image, so you won't have any artifacts. And despite just being a capacitive surface, the typing experience is really not as bad as you might anticipate, with Lenovo's product page boasting that the keyboard uses AI to enhance the typing accuracy. give a little typing demonstration. So I had a couple errors there, but really it wasn't that much different from a normal keyboard. It's something you can kind of get used to. Of course, another advantage to using an e-ink screen for the keyboard is that you don't need to make different keyboards for different languages. In the settings page, you can see I can just basically change the layout to whatever I want, and the keyboard will adapt to that. There are also a couple different layout options as well. What I've been using here has a little oval for the touchpad, and when I tap on that, it'll basically replace the spacebar with the touchpad with the buttons on the side, and obviously tap to click as well. But if you don't prefer that, you can go in here and change that to a more classic style. Give a preview of that. And obviously that does shrink the keyboard upward a little bit, but it gives you the touchpad at all times. And then there's also a white theme for both as well. But I've saved what is perhaps this laptop's most interesting feature for last. And I think that rather than explaining it, I should just show it. Yes, knock on the lid and the laptop will magically crack open. This works even with the laptop off, and it actually works most of the time from my experience, even though I found it to inadvertently trigger once in a while. The experience of actually using the C930 is pretty decent, with Windows 10 performing well on our modern CPU and our flash storage, albeit obviously limited by our lack of RAM. Our low power CPU, although it may not be the fastest, obviously gives us pretty great battery life, and the USB-C charging is quite nice as well for when you do need to plug in. The e-ink display unfortunately is not backlit, although it is quite reflective, so it's perfectly usable in most environments. So that was a quick tour of one of the weirdest laptops I've ever seen, and certainly one of the weirdest in my collection. I hope you enjoyed the look at this weird piece of history. And thanks so much for watching.